Hi, this is Dr. Mark Hitchcock, and I want to welcome you to Marking the End Times. This is a program that's designed to help you understand what's happening in our world today through the lens of Bible prophecy. And on today's program, what I want to talk about is central bank digital currencies. This is something we've talked about some before. I want to talk about with you today, and we'll be talking about it, I know, in days ahead as well on some future programs, because this is really a developing story that's going to unfold over the next several years. But this is where money is headed. This is where the world economy is headed. And we need to understand this, these central bank digital currencies and their prophetic implications. And there's a lot happening right now on this front that we need to understand. When we go to the subscriber only section, I want to answer a question about Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14 that talks about that broad is the road and broad is the gate that leads to destruction. Narrow is the path and narrow is the gate that leads to life. And the person sending in wants to know, what are the end time implications of that? And will there be more people in hell than there are in heaven? I want to answer another question about will believers who are at the judgment seat of Christ and experience our judgment there, will we be spectators then at the great white throne judgment in Revelation 20? And then another question that a lot of people wonder about, I get asked a lot, is can people in heaven today who are there right now, can they look down and see or at least know what's happening on earth? Right now, are they viewing what's happening on the earth? So when we get to this subscriber section, we'll answer those questions here in a few moments. But I want to talk about about central bank digital currencies. You may not have heard of these. You may have heard of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's very decentralized. But these central bank digital currencies are basically digital cash. I mean, it's a digital form of fiat money that's made available to the public. Here's a definition of kind of what these central bank digital currencies are. It says a central bank digital currency is a tokenized version of a country's fiat currency, like the dollar or the Japanese yen. It's similar to stable coins. A central bank digital currency's value tracks that of a currency issued by a government like the US dollar. But instead of being managed by private companies, a central bank digital currency is issued by a central bank like the Federal Reserve. There's an article or a headline that came out in the Wall Street Journal about a month ago that says central bank digital currencies are coming, whether countries are ready or not. And then the subheading said, the development could have a profound impact on the banking system, but few people understand it. And I think that's an understatement there, that few people understand this. I think very few people understand the implications of what's coming. Just a little background about this. 114 countries are exploring digital currencies. So this isn't some kind of marginal idea. This is 114 nations are in various stages of either exploring or implementing these central bank digital currencies. These 114 countries represent 95% of the global gross domestic product. So basically, it pretty much covers all the main nations in the world. Now, there are advantages to these central bank digital currencies that are often touted. They'll say, well, this is going to help with prevent money laundering. It's going to reduce fraud, counterfeiting, all kinds of terrorist financing, drug trafficking. There's all kinds of ways this will help. Even probably with disease and pandemics, because a lot of disease is spread by money that's transferred from one hand to another. But these central bank digital currencies, as many advantages as there's some incredible disadvantages to this and major problems with this. Now, again, just a little bit more background. 17 countries, including Russia and China, are currently piloting a central bank digital currency. So it's not been fully adopted, but they have a pilot project. 11 nations are developing one, such as the United States and Japan, which Japan has announced just this week that its central bank digital currency pilot program is going to launch in April of this year. Also, 11 countries have actually fully launched a central bank digital currency, including the Bahamas and Nigeria. And India, the second most populous country in the world, maybe first now, will pilot a retail digital currency on December 1st, so about 10 months from now, called the e-rupee. So the e-rupee is going to come online on December 1st. The digital yen, the pilot program for that in Japan will be in April. And countries like China continue to test their version of a central bank digital currency. And of course, theirs is referred to as the digital yuan. But it now reaches 260 million people in China. So this is something we see happening around the world, but it's also something that is hitting home here in America. This has really been in the works in America since 2017. President Biden signed an executive order. It's Executive Order 14067 on March 9th of 2022, about a year ago. But here, just this last week, an article came out that says San Francisco Fed, so the Fed there in San Francisco is hiring for digital currency development. So the Fed in San Francisco is now putting out feelers and putting out for job applications for people to come work on the digital currency. And the article says that the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco is looking for software developers to help research and design a central bank digital currency. So this is coming to the United States, really whether people ultimately want it or not. Now, what are the problems with this? We've talked about this a bit before, but obviously, the big problem just is privacy, because once it's digitalized, money is, they can track every transaction that a person makes. So it's going to be fully trackable and traceable. It's going to be possible for them to know where every digital dollar is being spent. One article that I read puts it like this. This is a pretty powerful statement. It says, ironically, one of the biggest dangers of central bank digital currencies could be that they succeed. Buried in the code and systems that direct how they function could be a liability that a country doesn't discover until it's too late. So one of the worst things could happen is that this succeeds. Because you know how technology is, there can be some liability built into code or whatever's there that's not discovered until it's too late. So this is coming, and it's going to allow these central banks that have this and the governments that control it to censor transactions. So to allow certain transactions, not allow others. They're going to be able to discourage certain transactions. They're going to be able to incentivize other transactions that they want people to make. So one article I read pointed out, and this is frightening, that actually in the Bahamas, which they now have a central bank digital currency, it's functioning there, that they actually are disincentivizing saving and people having cash. So what they do is they can cap your cash balance. So they can put a cap on how much cash you can have, and they can also have a negative interest rate on cash. So not only are you not earning interest on your cash, there's actually a negative interest rate that if you have cash is actually eroding or chipping away at your cash value. So basically it's kind of forcing you to put money and have your money in this digital currency. And again, they can control how much cash you have and say you can't have any cash over a certain amount. And of course, these negative interest rates can be imposed by central banks on all of someone's cash holdings. So they can put penalties on cash and negative interest rates on all of this as well. And again, all of this can be programmed where they require tax payments on every central bank digital currency transaction. So it may get rid of income tax, but every transaction, they'll know about every transaction, so they can immediately tax every transaction to get the money that they desire. And of course, they can make the tax whatever they desire for that to be. So we're going to be talking about this more along the way because this is going to be a developing story. They say probably this won't come to Japan maybe fully until 2026. But again, that's only 3 years away. So this is the wave of the future in the economy. Now, I think this fits in dramatically with the prophetic picture of the end times. Because I think in the third seal judgment, the rider on the black horse, starts out the rider, the white horse, the Antichrist. The rider on the red horse is warfare that begins to break out. And then in the wake of warfare is going to be basically a global economic implosion during the tribulation period. It's going to be an all-out implosion. It's going to be hyperinflation. It's going to take everything a person can earn just to buy enough cheap food to eat. You can read about it there in Revelation chapter 6, the rider on the black horse. So it's going to be a global financial apocalypse. And I think out of that, the Antichrist will rise as the global economic savior. And he's going to institute eventually a global economic system. He's going to rule the world economically. Ultimately, he'll rule the world religiously and politically and militarily in Revelation 13. But I think his entree is going to initially be in the area of the economy. That's the easiest way to gain control. And I don't think there'll have to be a global currency. If you have these central bank digital currencies in place, if you can get control of this, then you can control all of these currencies and basically control the world economy. So I think economic control in the wake of that global economic implosion with the third seal will be the first phase of the Antichrist global takeover. And when that happens, then ultimately he'll institute the mark of the beast. No one can buy or sell without his mark. He'll have total control of the world economy. And the only way you can have that is some kind of cashless system, just like this central bank digital currency system that's being established. Now you hear about all this, and you say, man, that's really unsettling. And you look at our world today, and we see the threat of recession coming, and there's just the economy seems to be unsettled. And I just want to encourage everyone, don't do something rash. And a lot of people go and put all their money in gold. If you feel like that's what God wants you to do, certainly do that. But we want to be wise in these days in which we live. We want to be good stewards of what God has given to us. But we want to be ultimately rich toward God. That's what Jesus said in the parable of the rich farmer. He said, you want to be ultimately rich toward God. That's what you and I want to have, a rich, thriving relationship with God. And remember what we see on all of our money. To me, it's ironic. People love money and they trust in their money, but all of our money says, in God we trust. So even in times like this, when we see these things happening that are unsettling, we need to remember that God's in control. Things are being set up by God for what's going to happen in the end times. But you and I need to trust God and be wise and be good stewards with the resources that God's given to us. We're going to go now to the subscriber section. Again, I'm going to answer a question about will those who are at the judgment seat of Christ, believers, will we be spectators at the great white throne judgment? Can people now in heaven look down on earth and see what's happening here? How much do they know about what's happening down here on earth? So we'll go into the subscriber section. If you're not a subscriber, I encourage you to go to endtimes.com for just a small amount, $7 a month. You can be a part of this endtimes.com community, and you can have access to programs like this one, the one that I'm bringing you right now, but also a lot of archived material that's there. So thank you so much for being a subscriber.